Hey, welcome in, everybody. It is Wednesday evening, otherwise known as Thanksgiving Eve for a lot of folks. I don't know how many people will be watching us right now, probably out with their friends and family.
Lots of people are watching us right now, Brad.
What is this? This has got a night. I remember in college, this is like one of the biggest bar nights of the year, right?
Sure.
It's got some weird Blackout Wednesday. Is that what this is? I
was very boring in college.
No, but yeah, because the reason it is, and for folks that don't know, if everyone comes home from college or school and they go meet with their friends from high school, whatever, in their local tavern or establishment, because they're home and there's nothing else to do. And then tomorrow's a big holiday. But either way, hopefully you're in Uptown enjoying
the parade.
I mean, I hope a lot of folks are up there. We're going to take a live look from our WCNC tower cam. I swung it back. It's kind of interesting. So it's called the Thanksgiving Eve Parade, James, but it's actually a Christmas parade. It's a Christmas-themed parade, but on Thanksgiving. It's kind of weird.
Thanksgiving just never gets its time.
Yeah.
It's even like the parade that you should watch tomorrow on WCNC Charlotte.
Yeah.
Ends with Santa Claus.
Exactly. So it's kind of this weird thing. Is it a Thanksgiving parade, Christmas parade? It's kind of both. It's a holiday parade. Let's just call it that. But technically the name is the Novant Thanksgiving Eve Parade. So if you are watching on your phone right now, thank you for watching on WCNC Plus on YouTube or on our app. Temperatures are great. I mean, some years this parade, I've been here a while, it's freezing cold. I mean, there's people bundled up. We do like the B-roll, and the kids are all in their hats and mittens, or it's raining. We've had some storms, but this year, it's really nice. 60s, great conditions. But don't get fooled, because we have a secondary cold front on the way. The secondary cold front is what we call a dry front. It's got no moisture with it, but boy, does it have cold air. It's basically, I'm going to look at the temperatures on my other source here. I'm looking, it's made it almost a hickory. So the temperatures have fallen into the 40s up in the mountains, and the dew points have fallen back dramatically. Dew points are in the 20s in the mountains. We're still in the 40s. So we've got some big changes moving in. Quick look at your hourly forecast, though. You see the temperatures taking a nosedive there. Boy, we're going to be back into the 30s pretty quickly. I think by 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, we'll see 30s, which is going to feel crazy cold, but guess what? It's our normal low. Tomorrow is kind of the normal day as temperatures bottom out. But because we've been in the 60s and 70s and even that 180 this past weekend, this is going to feel dramatically colder. And if you're in town visiting or you traveled, this was the weather we had the last 7 days. If you packed for this type of weather, you've got a rude awakening, because that is spring weather. You could have taken your jacket off, wear shorts in the middle of the day. I mean, look at that. There's more 70s and 80s there than our normal high, which is in the 50s. The next 24 hours, that cold air moves in, and by tomorrow morning, there's your 30s. But tomorrow afternoon, that is cold. Temperatures upper 40s, low 50s. That's actually a little bit below average, not crazy below, but it gets worse. Friday, Black Friday, we joked about this the other day. Nobody really waits in line anymore for Black Friday like they used to. But we used to be really heavy on that morning because of how cold it was. And if it was raining, people are waiting. Most people probably aren't going to be waiting outside. And even if there are Black Friday deals in store, you can usually get in a virtual line now via an app. And they all want you to go to the app now. But it's cold on Friday. So if you have any outdoor plans, bundle up. I mean,
Like putting my holiday lights up?
That would be something a lot of people would be doing, going to cut the Christmas tree. It's going to be chilly. So at least it'll put you in the holiday spirit with a lot of 40s. I'm hoping this just stops my grass from growing so I don't have to mow it again, and gets rid of the mosquitoes, because we've got several nights below freezing likely coming up in the next couple of days or so. So it's going to get a lot colder. And just to give you a perspective, remember I showed you the last 7 days? Let me show you the next 7 days. This puts everything in perspective. All that above average highs, look at all the below average. You've got 40s and 50s for highs. Now, a lot of us, and Tim and I will joke about this as well, but people are, it's really cold. But remember, Monday's December 1st. It's the meteorological beginning of winter. So almost on cue, it's like Mother Nature said, you know what, I'm done with the warm weather in fall. We're going to winter. Let's just go full on. And yeah, these are temperatures we normally would have in about January. But the jet stream pattern is pretty interesting. We've got this dip in the jet stream this weekend. It looks like another dip develops early next week on top of a ridge over the southeast. So, you know, if you've been following us, we've been kind of battling back and forth between warm and cold. We're going to be in that battle zone, it looks like, going into next week. And we're going to have some cold air damming. Anytime there's cold air to our north and high pressure gets over New England, we can get cold air to sneak down the eastern facing slopes and kind of get trapped against the mountains. And then you throw in the added feature of having a low pressure system coming out of the Gulf, and that moves north. And you could see our weather impacts next week. We've got seasonably to, I would say, seasonably cool weather. The storm track, that's uncertain Tuesday, Wednesday. It's fluctuated even from yesterday's guidance. And the impacts, a cold rain for most of us, but mountain mix possible on Tuesday. Right now, this low pressure is shifted a little further south, which is, you would think, okay, that's going to bring colder temperatures, but it also keeps the moisture farther away. So there's some uncertainty. Just hold on to your hats, because next week could be really interesting, and stay tuned for updates, because we will likely have many. Here's that battleground. I don't think I've ever seen an outlook like this where the border of the above and below touch each other. There's no normal. So typically we'd have a gray stripe between there. Basically the 30% above and 30% below are basically right over us. So that's telling me that the guidance is showing, hey, we've got some uncertainty, because it could go either way. But it's an interesting map, because if you remember last week, we were trending towards that ridge. Now it looks like that cold air is heading towards the Great Lakes in New England, and the ridge is moving down into Florida. So that is definitely a little bit of a trend we're watching. Doesn't mean we're going to be super cold. Doesn't mean we're going to be super warm. We could be in between, and that's kind of what this is telling you. I think that's why 40s and 50s for highs are probably more likely. And while, yes, that's colder than what we've seen recently, it's probably going to be close to average, honestly. Here's a look at your Jerry Hunt Supercenter 7-day forecast. A lot going on this weekend. We've got App State at home, the Panthers at home against the Rams. If you're going to that game, I wouldn't expect a downpour or any rain during most of the game. It looks like this will be later, like after the game is over, but just in case, bring the poncho and rain gear, because it's going to be a cold rain if it does happen. So 50 degrees in rain is never fun, but we're going to one-up you. How about 45 degrees in rain on Tuesday? That's the high, by the way. It points it could be in the 30s and raining, so just to give you a heads up. And we'll go 10 days in the future, because I want to get you right into December now. And December is the beginning of winter meteorologically for all climate and weather records. That's when it starts. I know your calendar says something different. I'm just going to give you what we do for weather and climate. December 1st, that's all that data counts as winter. It doesn't count as fall. So it does get a little milder at the end of the week as temperatures get in the 50s, but it looks like more rain. We're going to talk about all this, holiday travel, what's going on across the country with Tim Buckley from WFMY. Stick around. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. Tim Buckley joins me from WFMY. And Tim, today used to be the busiest travel day we always heard. It wasn't as bad today for a lot of folks. And yesterday was pretty crazy on the roads and some of the airports. But today it's kind of smooth sailing across the country, it feels like.
Yeah, I really liked the post that you shared that had a lot of the info about busiest travel days. And it was kind of interesting to me that a lot of them were summertime days.
Yes.
And it actually didn't seem like there was a lot of rhyme or reason to them, or at least I didn't logically connect a lot of events or things like that to them. Maybe more people just travel in the summertime. I'm not quite sure, but maybe spaced out is the way to go this time of year. And Sunday could be a little bit worse than today for the people that are flying, but nice to see. Charlotte looked okay. It wasn't super big chaos or anything or big lines. That's nice.
No, I was going to say we were pretty pleasantly surprised. We had a couple accidents, but honestly, for being such a big a road travel holiday, it wasn't bad road-wise either. I mean, just the good news is the weather wasn't an issue, Tim. I think we were concerned that we might have some weather issues yesterday. They really weren't too bad today. Not too bad either. And it seems so far like things are kind of calm from a weather standpoint. So the travel's kind of over. Now we're kind of focused on the holiday itself. And, you've been watching the same trends I have. There's definitely been a trend here for some cooler temperatures, not only this weekend, but now possibly going into next week. And it's definitely an interesting pattern. But let's talk about what's happening right now in the Great Lakes, because we mentioned this yesterday. You showed a great graphic of the snowfall totals. We've got this big November gale, I like to call them, moving over the Great Lakes. It's got cold air with it. And look at the lake effect snow machines beginning to crank up, coming off of Lake Michigan, Lake Superior. But on top of that, the winds are crazy up there. We've got gale warnings on the lakes. We've got high wind warnings for some areas. And this could probably be a bigger issue if it affects some of the airports as far as the wind, more so than the snow. But this is going to be a big story, I think, by the end of the weekend, Tim, because this will be some of the biggest snow totals we've seen so far, I guess, this fall, early winter season.
Yeah, it sure will. And, this is a thing that I feel like the internet age has been really, really good for lake effect snow awareness.
Yes.
I don't think it's something that most of the country used to really understand, but now that you do, it's some of the most localized and most intense and biggest total snow that you can have. And there's cool reasons for it, especially at this time of year. You still have the lake temperatures that are still fairly warm. And when it comes to weather, what can you do to get the air to rise? Well, warm air rises. So if you have a lake down here that's, let's say, 50 degrees or something, and you're bringing in air above it that's 30 or 20, that's going to be some rising air. And that just goes throughout the whole column. You've got moisture because you're over a lake. And there you go. You're creating some snow bands, and they're going to move as the wind blows them. And so if you have a persistent wind direction, you're going to have some persistent snow bands, and they look just like that, and they can look a lot worse than that too. Hard to see when you're driving through some of those.
Yeah, so I was just looking at some of our some of the maps coming out of our sister station WKYC up in Cleveland. Our sister station, Betsy Kling, good friend of mine, and ours up there. And when you look at some of their snowfall maps, it's pretty crazy. The eastern snow belts of Cleveland, they could see 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 inches of snow, and then the southern areas, maybe a half an inch of snow. And I saw a great map that Betsy had posted earlier. She had the lake effect area highlighted and said, "Oh, we can handle that," and everybody else was in another contour said, "What snow?" Because they probably wouldn't see that much. And that's kind of the way it goes. And I guess the best way to explain this to people in the South is it's like those pop-up thunderstorms in the summer where somebody gets an absolute deluge and gets like street flooding and even a creek, and then somebody else in the other part of town is like, "I didn't see a drop of rain." So this is their map currently. This is through Saturday. And I know those areas east of Cleveland. Chardon is an area that gets clobbered. Chardon is an area there in Geauga County. They're east of town. It's not only east in a good spot, but it's actually a higher elevation. Their high school mascots are called the Hilltoppers because it's actually on a hill. And it's one of the snowiest places in northeast Ohio. I grew up south there, closer to like the Norton, Cuyahoga Falls area. That's near Akron. The west side. We call that the secondary snow belt. You need more of a north wind. The wind that's coming out of this is going to be a southwest wind. And Tim, one of the interesting things too that we're going to see on Lake Erie is a seiche, or what we call a meteo tsunami. All the water is going to get pushed from one side of the lake to the other. And folks down here have probably seen this on the coast when we get storm surge. and then we get a blowout when sometimes the water gets pushed out of the bays or the sounds. This is going to happen on the west side of the lake and the east side of the lake. I think there might be coastal flood warnings for the Buffalo area because the water is going to get pushed up there. So this is a pretty significant weather event. If it wasn't the holiday weekend, we'd probably be talking more about this.
Yeah, it's a big deal. And like you said, with the winds being so strong, I think that's going to have those bigger impacts when you talk about the water level and the station. I was wondering how to pronounce it, right? Because I was just looking at this myself.
Yeah.
It's not a word I've said aloud all that often, but just kind of a cool graphic
that's awesome.
to kind of take a look at if I pop it full. So this is that wind blowing along the lake. And we call that a fetch. If you have a long fetch of wind kind of parallel to the lake. So in this case, Lake Erie runs basically southwest to northeast. So imagine, Toledo on the left and Buffalo on the right. They're going to have a higher water level. And that is a big thing that impacts them in quite a nasty way. So coastal flooding, not just something that happens in the oceans or in the Outer Banks or the Inner Banks here in the Carolinas, but it's something that happens along the Great Lakes too. And if you've never been to a Great Lake, I think it can be a little hard to imagine just how big these things are. But no, you can't see across them. These are huge bodies of water, and they are entire drivers of weather in that part of the country, and it's going to be a big deal. So that's probably the award for worst weather in the country this Thanksgiving would be in the Great Lakes area.
Yeah, and it is interesting. I've seen that a couple times, and I will say that word is kind of weird. It's sage. I just know about growing up on the Great Lakes because it was a term we used for the wind. It can happen with distant earthquakes as well, believe it or not. If there's a distant earthquake with the right frequency of seismic waves, it can cause the water in the lake to slosh back and forth. That's kind of what's happening here. Think about a bathtub or even a pool, like a kiddie pool, and you shake it back and forth. The water sloshes back and forth. That's what's happening in the Great Lakes in this situation. And Lake Erie is such a shallow lake. I say shallow. I think the average depth is like 50 to 70 feet. That's pretty deep. But the other Great Lakes are hundreds of feet deep. And so it's the shallowest. So it's more susceptible to some of these wind effects. And you're right about them being inland oceans. I remember the first time I took my wife. She's from Charleston, South Carolina. She'd never been to the Great Lakes. We get out there. She's like, "This is not a lake. That's an ocean." Because she couldn't see the other side. She was like, "I said, yeah, you really can't see the other side. Trust me, it's an inland ocean." And so, wild weather up there on the Great Lakes. It is made for some crazy weather events over the years because of those large bodies of water. Now, the cold air is part of this, right, Tim? We've got this cold air spilling down. You can see it invading the middle of the country there on your graphic in the Great Lakes. Tomorrow for us, it's definitely going to be a little shock to the system, but probably the warmest day of the weekend because it gets a lot colder for Friday and Saturday.
It really does, and so it's kind of like a little step-by-step process, and take what you will, because tomorrow might not be quite as cold on the numbers, but there'll still be pretty windy conditions. Friday as well, still it's going to get colder. Probably the coldest, and the wind is lessening a little bit. And then once you get to Saturday, it's not quite as windy, but it's still cold. So there are all these sides of the coin. It's just going to be blustery, and it'll feel like winter. And, the thing of it is, after I made my 7-day, I kind of looked at it and was like, I didn't do anything above 50 for the next 7 days.
Yeah. And
I didn't mean to do that. That's just the way it's looking right now. I think it is kind of that level of cold over the next several days.
So let's talk about this cold pattern because, a couple days ago we talked about it on this show, that we were kind of in this weird southeast ridge going to win. What's happened, I think, in the last couple of days is we're kind of in this battle zone. It looks like a trough develops over primarily the Great Lakes in the northeast. And Tim, I was looking at the CPC, the Climate Prediction Center's 6 to 10 day outlook, and we've showed this a couple times. I don't know if I've ever seen parts of the Carolinas being so normally you would have these bands of above, below average. There's no normal. There's a band of 30% below touching a band of 30% above. So it's kind of a weird setup because it's basically, I think, the modeling telling you, hey, we could be 30% above or 30% chance below because we're kind of in this battle zone. So it'll be a really interesting pattern to watch next week.
And it kind of goes to show you that there is a little more uncertainty than usual in terms of where that cold air will be and where that warm air will be. So enjoy your turkey tomorrow. You can keep on checking up on the forecast maybe in a day or two, and we'll have some more certainty for you. But it is always interesting when you're on the edge of those temperature zones,
Yes.
you can find yourself with some weather. And
Yeah.
so that could put us on, they also issue the precipitation outlook. For the first time in a little while, we're in that above average chance for rain.
For rain,
or
yeah.
precipitation. Yes. So in this case, we of course have been in a drought. We got some new numbers today, by the way,
Yeah.
which are about the same. But we could use some rain around here, and that might be the way to do it, is if you're kind of straddling that cold and warm zone. And, there might be a little winter intrigue as well across parts of the eastern U.S. It's hard to say where just yet.
Yeah, so that's the big uncertainty part is I think the storm track, as you mentioned, depending where it is. Yesterday we showed you kind of the look ahead, and the low pressure that was coming in on Tuesday seemed to be closer to us, Tim. It was definitely a more northern track. Now it's kind of suppressed a little bit to the south, and all the snow lovers out there get super excited when they get that track. But the problem is the suppressed track also takes the moisture with it. So it's like that's why it's so hard to get snow here, Tim. I tell people all the time, it's like, you got to have the perfect track where you're just enough moisture, but you're not too much moisture where it warms up everything. You got to play that kind of perfect track of cold and wet.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you can get so much moisture that the warm air wins out, the southerly flow, or it's too far south, which happened last year. Remember that big coastal winter storm where it snowed in New Orleans and the Gulf Coast, and we got nothing up here. So those are the extremes of our storm tracks.
Yeah, and just to be specific about next week, there are always some things you'd want to look for if you're a snow lover. You want to have a big, strong high of cold air in the Northeast.
Yep.
It didn't really look like we had that. There are some models today that are trying to put one up there, so I'm not so sure if that's off the table yet. You want to have moisture, obviously. I think that's in question, like you were just saying. It could be suppressed. We don't know. And you need to have that cold air throughout what we call the column of air, which means from the ground to above your head, to way above your head to where the planes fly. You got to keep it cold the whole way up, because if you melt a snowflake, you can never get it back, right? So you're either going to get freezing rain or sleet or rain. So how are you going to check all those boxes here? I'm not ruling it out, but I think it's going to be difficult to check all of those boxes. You could have overrunning where you get a little bit of that warm air above our heads. That could ruin things, even if we were cold enough. So I don't think it's reason to be too excited yet. If you're a snow lover, maybe in Virginia or the mountains, perhaps.
Yes.
Or the New England area, Mid-Atlantic. Those are all on the table. But keep in mind, when we're about 6 days out, this is not when we talk details. We're just looking at the pattern, and there's a pattern there to keep an eye on.
Yeah, for sure. And so you just reminded me of something, Tim, and I know you have a similar set of rules. I love your 10, but this is kind of my winter weather forecasting rules, and these have not failed me, Tim. They work pretty well. 7 to 10 days out, we start looking for pattern recognition in the southeast. Is there the potential setup? And we're kind of in that territory right now where, there's some pattern to keep an eye. 5 to 7 days out, is it trending up or down? Does it look more or less likely? 3 to 5 days out is probably the maximum, at least for us, where we would start talking about P-types, or what we call precipitation types. Is it going to be snow, ice, rain? Mm-hmm. And honestly, snow totals and amounts, which everybody loves to share, like 10 to 15 days out, we kind of stick to the 1 to 3 days, because that's legitimately where you kind of know one way or the other. And that's, if you follow those rules, you really can, and it gives you a reason to check back every day. You can be on top of these storms before they happen. They're not going to sneak up on you.
No, they shouldn't. And that doesn't mean there aren't surprises or there aren't, things that change. There are going to be things that change every day. It looks different today than it did yesterday. And it'll probably look different tomorrow. To some extent, we get new information every 6 hours. But, kind of the things to keep in mind is probably the Tuesday time frame that we're looking at now, and maybe not so much Wednesday. And just up in the air. Cold rain, most likely. But could you get a little mix on the front end? That'll be what we kind of determine over the next couple of days. Early December, it always feels like it's too early to get a system. It's not. Last year we had a little something around December 2nd or 3rd, I believe. This would be about the same time frame. We had our last, for us, Brad, our last huge one was back in 2018. That was on December 8th. We got about 13 inches of snow up in Greensboro. So it can happen sometimes. It sure can. It's not too early.
And I could tell you who's super excited about the cold. Maybe not everybody who loves warm weather, but the ski resorts, they would love to be open right now, Tim. Their target every year is Thanksgiving weekend. And so we've had this warm stretch, so they couldn't open today. They're not going to be open tomorrow, probably not Friday. But what's interesting, this is a cold enough pattern, especially at night for snowmaking. This is going to be good news for them. I think they're going to be able to crank up some snow. And I wouldn't be shocked if we're looking at a live picture from the Maggie Valley, which is where Catalucci is, that one or two of our ski resorts try to get open sometime later this weekend, because two things happen on Thanksgiving weekend. Ski resorts try to open, and a lot of people go to the mountains to cut Christmas trees. So I would be curious if some of them just try to get open to pull a couple people in for a couple runs here or there. But this is really good news for all the skiers out there in the southeast, because this could be a good snowmaking setup with the cold air not only coming in but possibly sticking around for more than a couple of days, Tim.
Yeah, they need it. We thought we got ourselves off to a pretty hot start there a couple weeks ago on Veterans Day, right? And we know what's happened since then. It hasn't gone below freezing since. So that's part of the economy. That's part of getting tourism up there into the mountains. So certainly we're rooting for them. There's nothing we can do about it. We can't change the weather, but boy, their snowmaking technology has come a long way in the last couple of years, hasn't it?
Yeah, I'll tell you a couple. I've gone up to Beach Mountain. I've been to Catalucci. I've been to a lot of skiers across the country, and those two places might have some of the best snowmaking machines and setup I've ever seen. And it's all automated now. Each fan gun on the mountain, when the wet bulb temperature gets to a certain temperature and the air temperature, they just kick on automatically. So they maximize every minute of available snowmaking, and that's why they can get those places open. They have to, because they got to maximize every minute of cold air. So it's always shocking when people say, "Yeah, they're skiing in the mountains." I'm like, "Yeah, you give them one good cold night, and they'll get that place blanketed pretty quickly." So don't look at your local weather. If you want to go up and go skiing, look at what's happening up there. The webcams are great. They do a great job up there, and hopefully people who want to get into skiing, this is a great place to learn. Because you're not dealing with monster mountains, but you will become a good skier skiing on some of this icy stuff here on the East Coast.
Yeah, for sure. Certainly hope everybody has a good Thanksgiving, whatever you might be doing. If you're sticking around, you're going somewhere, eat well, stay warm, and be bundled up, because you're going to need it next couple of days.
Yeah, I hope people came to town and did not impact for the weather that's coming and not the weather we've had, because they will be in for a shock. And also with the cold temperature, folks, make sure you're being safe with your heating devices, because this might be the first cold blast for many of you using your heat and your heating sources, so make sure you're safe with those. Be safe, everyone. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Tim and I will see you again next week, because we'll be off the next couple days.